Welcome to Jewish Culture in Sweden online. I'm Elizabeth Åsbrink. I'm a journalist and writer, and I'm based in both Stockholm and Copenhagen. And today I'll talk to one of the most read Israeli writers today. And not only a writer, he is a script writer and a film director, award-winning such. Etgar Keret, and he's translated into over 45 languages all over the world. In Sweden, he's published on Brombergs Publishing Company, and he'll be in his home in Tel Aviv, and I'll be here in Copenhagen. Okay. Hi, Etgar. It's good to see you.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, how is life? Are you locked in your house?
Yeah, I think the rules here are very similar to rules in many places in Europe. I think you're allowed to go out only if you want to buy food, or I don't know, if you take place in some kind of athletic activity and you have to be in 100 meters from your home, or there are all those rules. But in general, for me, I must say that when I'm in Israel, when I'm not overseas, this is how I live my life anyway.
Exactly.
Exactly. So I think for me, it's really like it's this kind of time where the entire world knows what it's like to be me. And maybe after that, they'll be more empathic, after they know what I've been going through, maybe they'll be more empathic.
Well, I'm not sure you've experienced a great misunderstanding or non-empathic feelings towards your job, but I recognize this. I think every writer does. This is quite normal to us, to not see people and not talk to people and not take in the world a lot, at least not without deciding to let the world in. So this isn't too strange for a writer, but still it is a huge change of how we see the world. I can see that in the texts that you have written, for instance, the one we're going to hear after the talk. I mean, there's a change of your mood.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting period because I think that this kind of force of inertia that is very dominant in life and in our personal life kind of stopped. And in a sense, the attempt to stop the force of inertia is what you try to do in art. Because let's say if you every day you go next to a bench and I want you to feel that this bench is special, I want you not to go through the motion, not to say I'm late for work, but be in the moment and experience something, then I'm trying to break the force of inertia. And I feel that there is something that the situation is very difficult and painful and anxious, but at the same time there is a very authentic element to it. It's like the negative feelings that we are feeling, we're really feeling them. Unlike most of the time in our life when we're not feeling anything.
Yeah. But I've spent some of this time in Sweden and some in Denmark, and these are two very small and neighboring countries, and still the atmosphere is quite different. Sweden is quite relaxed compared to the rest of the world, and Denmark is more strict. But the level of anxiety pops up a lot. Just the way we meet when we take a walk, we take huge circles around each other. And I've been thinking, what will this do to our way of greeting each other and looking each other in the eyes? Have you experienced any change in your surroundings?
Of course, and I think, even if you're talking about this close physical proximity, then I think that let's say when you think about theater or cinema, then it's all this kind of an experience of a community. And the moment that if you're not able to be close to each other, the magic doesn't work, And so I feel that there is something about this, that many of the interaction, the moments that you take a physical distance or you're aware of things that you were not aware before, they don't work that well.
No.
You know, you cannot do the same thing the way you did. Or let's say if you do it, then there is this kind of text and subtext because you act in a certain way and you mean something else. Just the other day, I saw grandparents talking to the grandchild here, and they were in a car, and the child was on the other side of the street. And all the time, the child wanted to run, but his parents said, "No, no, no, we talk from here." And all the time, the grandparents said to him, "Stay away, stay away, stay away." But they kept moving forward toward him, you know. So I'm not saying that anything about this kind of interpretation is simple or trivial, but it's just kind of there is something let's say very anxious and bare about this new reality that we're entering.
Yeah. And I see when I read your texts, some recent ones, I understand you've been writing a lot because of the isolation or because of the present state, one way or another.
Yeah, I think it's two things. I think that, you know, since the corona situation started, I had the 4 trips cancelled.
Yeah.
So I think that if I talk about the force of inertia in my life, is basically flying to all kinds of places, you know, and it's enjoyable and I learn things, but it's what I'm used to doing. You know, when I do it, I don't necessarily ask myself other questions when I will ask myself when I'm really bored, you know. And I think that, you know, there is something about creating that it has to do with boredom, you know. You don't write poetry in the middle of watching a movie that you really like, or in the middle of watching a football game, or in the middle of making laugh, you know. When you do stuff, you do stuff. And when you don't know what to do with yourself, when you try to kind of delve into yourself, find something, this is when you write. So of course, like stopping all my commitments and being in this little room, you know, with these little windows, and I don't have anything better to do than writing.
Yeah. I was reading, just thinking of what you said about theaters and cinemas, because I was reading one theater critic from Germany, and he said all these internet transmissions and online performances, they were totally wrong. We shouldn't get used to them, because the theater needs to be what a theater is. So we shouldn't change it for something else. We shouldn't substitute it. Do you agree?
Yeah, I feel like, you know, for me, it's not even like theoretical or something. It's just that I saw theater through screens, you know, and for me, it doesn't work, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just doesn't work. So it's not a question.
It's one dimension's gone. At least one dimension, actually. Yeah.
And I must say, for example, that for me, even watching lectures on the web, you know, there is something that is distinctly different, and it's less than being with in a person the same space and catching his eye line, or me as a lecturer, I react to what I sense from the audience, you know. So it's different. The truth is that the only format I like in this kind of Zoom thing is those one-on-one conversations, because the fact that we're both doing it from home, and, you know, and that 2 minutes ago I was kind of, I don't know, eating some Emmental cheese, and you know, and maybe I don't wear shoes now and everything, you know, then it makes actually something about the conversation much more intimate, because maybe people are watching us or will be watching us, but when we speak, we don't feel it.
Yeah. Yeah. But I've also read another German guy, an architect, who said that after this, we will look at handles of doors in a completely different way.
But may I ask, you usually read so many German guys, or is it just a virus?
No, it's just now. I've been happening to discussing things with my husband, and he's read a lot of German newspapers. So he sort of said, look at this, read this. So no, I don't normally.
But because I think it's a perfect notion, you know, the ways that we look at door handles. But again, you know, even if we don't talk about our handles, the ways that how aware we are of the ways that we use our hand and touch our face, you know, this is one thing. It's funny because my wife and I, we've just finished a TV miniseries for Arte France, and the lead actor was Mathieu Amalric, and Mathieu Amalric had to play somebody who's unshaved, and because of some continuity issues, we had to pin, you know, those kind of little hairs to his face. And he said, but you know, how can somebody act without touching his face? Because, you know, whenever you think, you do those things. Yeah. And I think that, you know, if I don't like doorknobs, I can live in a tent, you know, but the relationship between two parts of my body, the fact that they need to be mediated, you know, through my brain, instead of me just picking my nose when I feel like it, you know, there is something about it that echoes something very anxious.
Yeah, it's a big part of our signal system, of course, when we communicate, how we touch our face, and what we do when we touch our face. We read people and we send out signals with it.
No, but for example, when I write, I constantly touch my face, and I only start thinking about it right now because I write and then I say,
touch your face when you write.
It's because I go like this, you know.
Okay.
So what happened is really that that there is something about these things that when I write, I'm in a situation of no awareness whatsoever. You know, like the house can be on fire or something because I'm just kind of in the story. And every time I touch my face, it takes me out of it, and I say, "Oh my God, why did I touch my face?" And,
you know, interesting. Well, I've sort of dealt with this hand thing through gloves, plastic gloves, which makes people look at me in a funny way when I go into a shop with plastic gloves on. But that makes, as long as I have my gloves on, I don't touch my face. It's a very good reminder to myself. But yeah.
Yeah, you know, you're a little bit like those dogs. They put this kind of the thing that you put on a lamp, and with your gloves, you know. So I'm saying those dogs, the other dogs, they laugh at them, but it actually works.
It works, and you can laugh at me. It's fine.
I will never laugh at you. You know, and I never laughed at a dog with the when I was on it.
No, exactly.
I appreciate the effort, and I appreciate the success of that effort.
Yeah, well, I'll think of you next time I put my plastic gloves on. Look, I want to talk a bit about the short story Coffee and Cigarettes, which I've recently read, and I know it will be published in at least a Danish newspaper and probably in a lot of other papers as well. It's been published in an Italian paper, right? Already?
Yeah. It was published in quite a few countries. I don't remember.
No, I just want to make sure our viewers can get a hold of it. It's a beautiful, fantastic, very Etgar Keret's story for me, because it's well, I won't say what it's about, that would be silly, but tell me about how it came to be. It's a beautiful story about a son and his father, both first the child is young for a short sequence or scene, and then it's a grown-up son and his old dying father.
Yes, it's I think 5 years ago, I've published a book called The 7 Good Years. And it was a book, it was a memoir about the 7 years in which I was lucky enough to be a father to my son and a son to my father. Because my father died when my son was 7. And it was the first time in my life that I wrote a memoir, nonfiction stuff, because I always write fiction. And for me, it was kind of, I think, a way of coping with some things, with the memories, with these experiences. After I finished this book, I felt like, that I said goodbye to my father and that I don't need to revisit it. But a few months ago, a friend of mine, he hosts a radio show in NPR called This American Life. And he told me that they were doing a show about parallel universes. And this immediately reminded me of my father, because my father was always kind of curious about parallel universes in which like life was different, they people there, they didn't ride cars, they only ride bicycles. They didn't discover that the car can be wide, or they would have lizards as pets or stuff like that. And he would always love imagining those things. And this kind of brought me back some memories of my father, and also my notion as he was dying, because he believed so much in imagining parallel worlds. And as I was saying goodbye to him, I was trying to imagine worlds in which he doesn't have to die, that I can stay with him. And I guess that this is something that we do many times in art. I think when we tell a story, when we make fiction, we're able to give some space or presence to something that existed only in our minds. But by sharing it, it suddenly, it exists, even if it's like, if you had a bad dream, then this bad dream, it exists. It's physically, it's an image in your mind. And the ability to take this image from my mind and share it with people kind of makes it more valid, makes it more real. Because if all of us can imagine it, even if it didn't exist, it kind of existed.
So this was the reason you wrote this short story, the radio show?
It was for the radio show, and it was really kind of talking about the radio show, because when they talked to me about parallel universes, it kind of woke up something that I kind of forgot, because it was something that my father would speak at when I was a child. And it wasn't never this kind of thing that I would sit with people and say, oh, my father would always used to do that. It was just kind of like the fact that he smoked a pipe. It was like a tick or something. And suddenly when there was a show all about that, I thought to myself, oh, my dad would have loved to listen to this show. And maybe I can write something for the show, and it will be a little bit kind of make him more present.
But there is a there's a huge similarity between what he does and what he did and what you do, of course. You do create parallel worlds in your writing all the time.
I think that there is something about kind of creating a story or making up a story. It's as if like you make the universe wider, because it didn't have this option before, and now this option is kind of acknowledged in this huge library of options. And I think that looking at this option can tell us a lot about our life, because we can look at another option and maybe be proud of ourselves, or we can look at another option and be ashamed of ourselves, or we can look at another option and say, you know what, maybe we should try harder. So there is something about the relation between imagination and reality that it's a little bit like a compass, because it kind of makes us navigate. What we do when we move into the future, we navigate between ideas and images of things that do not exist. People who build spaceship or look for a cure for cancer, they're working on something that isn't here. But the fact that they imagine it in their mind kind of helps them pinpoint and go to that direction, or go away from another direction.
I'm sure, most of the time we are aware of our thoughts. We are not in the present, and we are not in the reality, the real world. We are somewhere else most of the time, in the past or in the future or in a dream or in whatever. And that's why I sometimes, you work with film as well, and good film does not close that door to another reality, but bad films I think a lot of the stuff that now is available on the streaming services is very it lacks imagination a lot, and I think that closes this parallel universe, the way we could have to imagine something we didn't know before.
Yeah, you know, it's when you see a TV
Maybe
series,
I'm
for
a
example.
snob.
What?
Maybe I'm a snob, I said.
No, you're not. But I'm saying when you see a TV series and there is some kind of a twist in it, you know, when suddenly you discover that they're not really on Earth, or that his son is not his son but a dwarf, KGB spy. I don't know. So whenever we see that, we feel a great joy. You know, when you see it, we say, "Oh wow!" You know, we're happy.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit like as if we have this kind of our real estate of imagination, and we just discovered another room or another balcony or another floor. So I think that you know, I tried, you know, doing this the last mini series with my wife, L'Agent Immobilier, which is a comedy, or working on another TV series that is more kind of a detective and supernatural. So I try when I enter a genre to respect its rules, but at the same time to say, if it didn't give you a rule, then this is my chance of doing something that nobody thought that I could do, you know? And I think that if you work inside a genre and you go from the other side and you say, I told a story in the same way that hundreds of other stories were told, then it's much less exciting saying, I found some path and maybe it's a silly path and it's very long and it doesn't lead anywhere. But I found it and maybe people could walk down it, you know. And that's a thing that they could not do before.
Going back to the short story about the son and the father, I'm not sure I want to say about you and your father, but
it's about me. It's a real story.
Yeah, it's a true story.
It's a true
Well,
story.
I just think it's just a fantastic celebration of wanting to be alive and enjoying life in its very basic sensuous way.
Yeah.
And I sort of fall in love with your father because he does what he does. I let the readers read it, but I have to say that I think it's
no, he was an amazing guy, and I want to say that, you know, that in this TV series, basically it's a relationship between a guy and his father and a guy and his daughter, which is something a theme that I often deal with. And the father is he's less likable than my dad, but he has something that my father had. And when we wanted to cast him, we looked for an actor who was 80 years old, and all the actors that came, they were very good, but I couldn't make them look like my father. And after failing for more than a month, me and my wife came up with this idea that we don't need an actor, because an actor who's 80 years old had been training to play 80-year-old people. And so we need somebody with the body of an 80-year-old person, but with no concept of that. So we took a rock star, we took a singer, an 80-year-old singer. And the moment he entered the room, I said to my wife, yeah, he's a little bit like my father. You know, the moment that he had to take his pills, you know, for blood pressures, and he took them with whiskey, I said, he is our guy.
Okay. That's wonderful. So that has nothing to do with the virus situation we're in, but what connects this short stories with other stories I read by you is the very, very significant presence of death and the end of life. This is, I've read recently the one you're going to read in connection to this talk, which is called End of the World Blues, and also another one called Rock Solid Wife. the fear of death is very, very present. Is this something new for you, or is this something the virus situation has brought up?
Well, the truth is that I don't think I was ever particularly scared of death, but I was born an asthmatic, and I think that my biggest fear is to be unable to breathe. So in that sense, I think that there is something about the coronavirus kind of nightmare, is this idea of me being unable to breathe, which is something that I remember very distinctly from my childhood. So, like, I mean, if I could die, I don't know, if I could be stoned to death by strawberry cakes, then it would be okay with me.
Okay.
But
I remember.
not being able to breathe is something that really scares me.
Yes, well, it is scary, of course. And this is why, I mean, this virus is very scary for all of us. But I just feel that I've been close to death one or maybe two times. It depends on how you count. Once I was in a robbery, an armed robbery in a post office, and I had to lie on the floor with a gun, pointed at me, which I have no idea if I was close to death or not, but in my head I was close to death. And the second time I was very ill and in hospital and a lot of stuff that I won't bore anyone with. But the consequence of these two things was that I get really, really greedy for life. Exceptionally greedy. I can't stand good things in life going to waste. Is this something you recognize from being?
First of all, I did feel the same when I was close to death. I was in a car accident and badly hurt, but I'm saying in general, I always have this feeling that kind of the experience of living is like, let's say that you get one day pass to an amusement park, and you want to take all the rides. I think I studied math and I became a fiction writer, and then I started writing plays, and then I started writing screenplays, and then I started directing films, and then I started working on dance and choreography. And the only reason that I keep doing those things is because you can, and you know that you won't be, that you may not have another experience. So you say, okay, like for me, if you would say to me, if I could write another 5 novels or direct an opera in a satellite in zero gravity in space, then I would try the opera, not because I'm particularly fan of opera, but I think, wow, if I have the chance, why not do it?
Yeah. Well, you know what Mae West said, the film star, the sex symbol Mae West. She said, if I have an option between two bad things, I always choose the one I haven't tried. So our talk is going moving quickly towards its end. I was just thinking, how do you think, as a final question, this very, very special time we're living in right now, this particular moment in history, what would you think is, if we think in a parallel universe, where will this take us? Where will we be after this?
I think that, with the moment that the force of inertia kind of stops and you restart, it means that you can redirect your path. But the problem is that, that we are still undecided about which path we want to take, And so I think that when you look at the virus, you could say that this could make people more socially aware. Because, if people in the US said, if I'll be rich and exercise, I don't care about other people, but now they see that other people affect their health, and that maybe if they would have health insurance and could be taken care of, they wouldn't be contagious and bother you. So you could say this could develop social awareness, but you could say this could make countries and society close up because every person who comes from the outside is a risk. And, and because of, let's say, they would want to have industry closer by, they would be less global and open-minded. So I think that in the end, a little bit like a situation is a little bit like an object. It's like if I have a knife, I can operate on you and save your life, or I can cut your throat and kill you, or I can just cut bread and make myself a sandwich. It's a knife, and it's what we do with it. So I think that every person who is in this moment, with all the fear and with all the economical decline and with all this, can still look at it and see here some kind of a sliver of hope going somewhere well, and I think that the decent thing will be to try to promote that. I think people who are for the environment saying, look, we're not flying and nobody's dying, we can live without that. So how about we'll fly less? How about we'll make flying more difficult? Which is something that, I can both sympathize and I'm also scared of. And I say, what? Like people are going to say to me, how long will I live? Or will people say to me that I'm going to meet less people from the other parts of the world and, and be more close-minded? So I think most of these decisions, if we come to them decently in the bottom line, they come from something that is very human. I always say, I'm a left-wing liberal, and I always say that for me, like the choice between being a left-winger and a right-winger, the question is, do you feel more guilty or more afraid? If you're more scared, you are right-wing. If you feel more ashamed, you are left-wing. Neither of these emotions is a positive emotion. Both of them are ones that I would rather not have, but they define your identity. And I think that the same will go here. This fear will make, I guess, intuitively people close down, but maybe the kind of dealing with the situation of difficulty will actually make people discover new emotion and compassion, and maybe they will be more perceptive of the others. I think both those things will happen together.
Yeah. I think people long to be together with other people again. And I believe in that longing. I think, very strongly, I long to see people close in restaurants, in cafes, in trains. I'll be happy to see them.
Yeah, I believe that you will see them soon. I really
Good. Yeah, I hope so. Look, Etgar, our time is out. So I'll just have to say thank you for this very short talk, but very nice. And I'll listen to you reading your short story. You'll be reading Olives or The End of the World Blues. And to the people who've been watching us, I'll just say thank you. And thank you, Etgar.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Olives or The End of the World Blues. The world is about to end, and I'm eating olives. The original plan was pizza, but when I walked into the grocery store and saw all the empty shelves, I realized I could forget about pizza dough and tomato sauce. I tried talking to the cashier at the express line, an older lady who was Skyping with someone in Spanish on her cell phone, but she answered me without even glancing up. She looked devastated. They bought everything, she murmured. All that's left is ministerial pads and pickles. The only thing on the pickle shelf was a single jar of pimento-stuffed olives, my favorite kind. By the time I got back to the checkout, the cashier was in tears. He's like a warm loaf of bread, she said, my sweet little grandson. I never see him again. I never smell him. I never get to hug my baby again. Instead of answering, I put the jar down on the conveyor belt and pulled a 50 out of my pocket. It's okay, I said when I realized she wasn't going to take the bill. I don't need change. Money? She said with a snort. The world is about to end and you're offering me money? What exactly am I supposed to do with it? I shrugged my shoulders. I really want these olives. If 50 isn't enough, I'll pay more, whatever it costs. A hug, the tearful cashier interrupted me and spread her arms out. It will cost you a hug. I'm sitting on my balcony at home now, watching TV and eating cheese and olives. It was difficult to get the TV out here. But if this is it, then there's no better way to end it than with a starry sky and a lousy Argentinian soap. It's episode 436, and I don't know any of the characters. They're beautiful, they're emotional, they're yelling at each other in Spanish. There are no subtitles, so it's hard to understand exactly what they're shouting about. I close my eyes and think back to the cashier at the grocery store. When we hugged, I tried to be small, to be warmer than I really am. I tried to smell like I'd only just been born.
Thank you for watching Jewish Culture in Sweden online. I'm Elizabeth Åsbrink, and you can follow us on our website, www.judiskultur.se. I'm sure you can find us on any search engine if you want. And until I see you again, stay safe.